Hey everyone, welcome to the investor.bet NRL Round 20 betting trend and preview show for all 7 games coming up this weekend. And we're also going to have a quick look at the Origin game coming up tonight as well. So in this video, every week I go through each matchup, go through what the odds are and what the historical betting trends are specifically between those two sides, see who's been covering, see what the odds were in their previous matchups, see what the total points line was, who's have those games been going over or under, and also go through what I'm considering betting on and how I think those games are going to play out. So before we get into all the upcoming games, we'll quickly recap last weekend's matches. So in round 19, we only had the 5 games last weekend. It was a big week for the overs and a big week for home sides and favorites. So of the 5 games, 4 of them went over the total. The only game that went under was the Titans-Eels game, which was the game that had the highest total points line at 53.5 was the final number for that game. So clearly went under. Every other game went over. A couple of blowouts. Sharks comfortably beating the Tigers and the Seagulls comfortably beating the Knights on Sunday afternoon. Home sides covered 4 of the 5 games. So home sides continue to perform really, really well. If we look at the overall record on the season, home teams have covered 78 games so far. And then favorites covered 4 of the 5 games last weekend. And it's been a big year for the underdogs. We look here, underdogs have covered 80 of the 141 games so far. What these two things kind of tell you overall, especially this underdog favorite factor, is what's going to happen for the rest of the year is pretty much underdogs are going to be below what they really should be, especially home underdogs, because we've got a situation here where home teams have been covering really well and underdogs have been covering at a really high rate. And that needs to even out slightly. It's not going to end up in the opposite direction. So that doesn't mean just go back every favorite and every away side, for example. However, it's going to even up slightly before we get to the end of this season. So that's something you definitely want to keep an eye on. Of those games that I just mentioned, the only home side that didn't cover were the Broncos as favorite against the Dragons, and they're obviously the only home side that lost their game. Now, on to State of Origin. Game 3 is coming up tonight. Queensland at home, and it is a decider matchup. Going through the records of these deciders, Queensland haven't lost at home in a decider since 1994, so 30 years since they've lost this game. It's a very interesting game to bet on, and I don't know about you guys or like how you just approach betting in general, whether you bet with your heart or with your head in a lot of different situations, especially when a team you support is involved. First 2 games were complete blowouts. So game 1, bring up the stats for game 1, 38-10 to Queensland. This game was largely impacted by the send-off in the 7th minute. Queensland were leading 6-0 at that stage, went on to win 38 points to 10. We go through the statistics. New South Wales had slightly more possession. They completed at a higher rate as well. But obviously at this level, playing with a man down is near impossible to ever win a game in that situation. New South Wales had more post-contact meters, which is one of the key metrics to look at. So they were still winning the forward battle. However, we're just getting run around down the outside. New South Wales also put in a lot more attacking kicks and still defended fairly well. Both teams missed just over the 40 tackles for the game. If you look through these statistics, if it was 13-13, this game would have been a lot closer. And so you really have to look past the margin. Then in game 2, this was the even up game effectively. So Blues came out and won 38-18. They were leading 34-0 at halftime. Queensland had a little run for about 15 minutes during the mid part of the second half. But obviously the game was all but over from that point. The Blues completed at 91%. So even better than they did in game 1, and also won the forward battle up the middle. Both sides had 5 line breaks. And as we go through, once again, New South Wales more attacking kicks. So one thing we can really see from the statistics from game 1 and 2 is that New South Wales have performed better overall in the first 2 games so far of the series. Now the question is how do you approach game 3 knowing that Queensland have such a good record at home in deciders, and the home team just in general has a really good record in deciders. From a lineups perspective, if we bring up the team list, I believe just with a couple of outs to the Queensland backline and just overall in general, New South Wales have the slightly better side on paper, especially. And if this game was being played at a neutral venue, say the MCG like in game 2, I'd have New South Wales a 4-point favorite. However, being played at Suncorp definitely evens it up, and I do think the odds are pretty accurate where it currently stands at almost pick'em. Queensland are slight favorites last time I looked. And I feel like the best way you can play this game and how we're looking at playing is from the margins perspective. I do think it's going to be a really close game. Both the first 2 games have been blowouts. Feel like the NRL is going to want a close game to close out the series, boost up the ratings. You can obviously gather from those first 2 games that were all but over at halftime. A lot of supporters from the trailing side would have turned those games off, which isn't ideal. So I feel like there's definitely going to be a close game to end the series. Then from a total points perspective, the current line is at 41.5 for the total. I'd lean towards the unders in that game. Majority of games in this situation do lean towards the unders. I think the last 8 at Suncorp have also gone under in Origin. So that sets up well for an under. And game 3 deciders are generally won by defense, and that will also push you towards the under. So that'll be the other way I'm leaning. I'm leaning a slightly lower scoring game and looking for plays around the close margins. Now on to the games coming up this weekend. So Friday night is the opening game of round 20, and it is a really important game for both sides. Canberra at home to the New Zealand Warriors. Pretty much where these sides stand on the ladder right now. Whoever wins stays in the running for a top 8 position. Whoever loses is pretty much going to be out of the running and going to find it very difficult to make finals. So super important game. When I took down the odds for this matchup, the Warriors were small favorites, 1.5 line and $1.82 on the money line. However, since lineups have come out where the Raiders have had a couple of big ins and the Warriors few outs with injury, that has now swung around and it's almost exactly the opposite. Raiders are very small favorites now. Kind of get the feeling both these sides needed the bye. The Raiders have lost 5 of their past 6 games. They only win a 1-point win in Golden Point against the Dolphins. And then the Warriors have lost 3 of their past 4 games. They only win at home against the Broncos. So it'd be interesting how they come through the bye. As it currently stands, I am leaning towards the Warriors to be winning this game. The home side has a really good record in this matchup, covering 13 of the past 14, and the Warriors have won 4 of the past 5 against the Raiders. And I just, in general, feel like the Warriors are the slightly more consistent side. And on paper, they're the better attacking side and the better defensive side. And traveling to Canberra hasn't really been all that much of an issue for them. They won this matchup last season when they were 5.5-point underdogs, winning 36-14. So they have won the last 3, also in round 3 this season, winning 18-10 over in New Zealand. So leaning towards the Warriors. Probably a play on the 1-12 or just taking them on the money line because probably going to get over $2 for them from that perspective. Don't think they win by a great deal. I feel like it's going to be, a 4, 6, potentially 8-point margin for this game. Also, 9 of the past 13 head-to-head have gone under the total points line. At 46.5, I do think this number is slightly high. I'd be leaning towards the unders on that number. I have it set for my personal number at 44. So I do think it's a couple of points high. It is higher than the past totals in their past 5 meetings. So you can definitely see it is higher. Kind of the issue is though, we're dealing with 2 sides that are bottom 8 attacking sides and bottom 8 defensive sides. So, and they are very, very inconsistent, which makes it tricky to predict, are they going to defend well in this game, or are they just going to let teams run straight through them, or is their attack going to gel this week? But overall, it's probably staying away from the total, but just slightly towards the under, but going to go with the Warriors as the road underdog. The early game on Saturday afternoon, the Rabbitohs take on the Tigers. South Sydney, big favourites here, $1.30, minus 10.5. This is a game where the Rabbitohs pretty much have to win. They're going to have a near perfect run home to be able to make finals. However, if they lose this game, then the chances of that pretty much disintegrate to nothing. It's a game they really should be winning at home against the Tiger side, who've been lost their past 3 by double digits. However, they have played top 4 sides, Sharks, Storm, Roosters during that period. So this is definitely a little bit of a downgrade. I personally wouldn't have the Rabbitohs at this price. I feel like they are a touch short where they currently stand. However, I feel like if Coruscant wasn't out for the Tigers, then the number would be more around the 6 mark because he's a very, very important factor to this Tiger side. So I do think the Rabbitohs win and win comfortably. However, I probably don't want to get involved with them from a line or side perspective. Would potentially take them on the money line alongside another side if I found a good opportunity for that, as a double. But they do have a really good record. They've won 7 of the past 8 versus Tigers. However, the Tigers have covered 5 of the past 7. When they met last season, round 22, the Rabbitohs were 22.5-point favorites. So the line's definitely come down since that meeting. Rabbitohs won that game by 14 points. Home side has covered 11 of the past 12 in this matchup. And then from a total points perspective, I feel like this is where this game is most interesting from a betting perspective. With Coruscant out for the Tigers, I feel like that dramatically hurts their defensive ability. And from that perspective, I am considering the over 51.5 in this game. The Rabbitohs consistently week after week involved in high scoring games. And then that we've seen over the recent weeks, the Tigers just consistently concede big points to the opposition. And I feel like this is another game where both sides could rack up a score. Both sides, like the Tigers a couple of weeks ago, put up 28 points against Storm, and they're a lot better defensive side than the Rabbitohs. So the West Tigers are capable of it. Whether they do it on the day is the question mark. But in this game, just the overall play in dry conditions in the afternoon day match, leaning towards the over. Next game on Saturday, Newcastle take on the Brisbane Broncos. Interesting game here as well. Both sides, especially the Broncos, I guess, in desperate need of a win. The Broncos have now lost 6 straight games after losing against the Dragons last week. So they've lost back-to-back games at home. Now onto the road, where they've lost their last 2 on the road against the Warriors and South Sydney. They're 4.5-point favorites here. Personally, I couldn't take that. This is a game where you really have to wait for team lineups to be fully finalized after Origin. If you look at the lineups here, you'll notice that there are a number of key players here, all listed in the reserves for the Broncos and not in the starting 17. This can change before game time. Any one of these players can come in and replace a player in the starting 17. However, you won't know until closer to the game time. Looks at this stage, though, the Knights have named Ponga, Gagai, and Bradman Best. So their Origin players look to be lining up. However, they also could come out. But Broncos currently, Adam Reynolds as well in the reserves, looking to make his return after being out quite some time with an injury. But from a betting perspective, definitely don't get involved in this game before, those lineups are official. Looking at this game and, making a prediction as it currently stands, this is a matchup where I feel like it's going to be really close, a 4 to 6 point game either way. Broncos are the better attacking side overall in the season. However, their recent form definitely, hasn't shown that. And the Knights obviously are a poor attacking side, but do perform slightly better at home. And then defensively, these sides are almost identical statistically wise. And from that perspective, I feel like it's definitely going to be a close matchup. So looking at plays from the tri-bet, either side to win by 1 to 10 or 1 to 12 at around that $1.90 mark for this game. The home side has been very successful, winning 7 of the past 8. However, the Broncos have won the past 4 versus Newcastle. So those kind of counter each other out a little bit. And then from a total perspective, 3 of the past 4 head-to-head have gone over. This is another one that's very hard to judge, just as both these sides, attack-wise, have been very, very inconsistent. So I'm just going to stay away from a total in that game. The Saturday night game, Storm at home to the Roosters. This is definitely the best match of the weekend. Two of the best sides in the competition go up against each other. Roosters currently small favorites, $1.87 minus 1.5, even though Storm have covered 8 of the past 10 versus the Roosters, and they've also won 9 of the past 10. At home here, the Storm, generally very hard to bet against at home. However, this season they've really performed poorly against the spread and against the odds when they are at home. So they've definitely been overvalued in this situation. There's a couple of ways that I'm looking at playing this game. Firstly, from a total perspective, at 46.5, even though 7 of the past 9 between these sides have gone under the total points line in general for these matchups, and this is a higher total than we've seen, I am leaning towards the overs in this game. Both these are the top 2 attacking sides in the league, and they're both top 5 defensive sides. However, in recent times, especially the Storm have been slipping defensively. Both of them are coming off the bye, but if you go back to the week prior, the Storm conceded 28 against the Tigers. Prior to that, they were in a low-scoring game against Canberra. Then they conceded 24 against the Dolphins, 24 against the Warriors, 28 against Newcastle, 26 against Manly, going back through the 5 games prior to that. So in recent times, they've been versing, bottom 8 sides in the competition and conceding 20 plus consistently. Now they go against the Roosters, who have put up 40 plus points in their past 2 games and consistently been scoring around that 30-point mark, and overall in the season averaging over 30 points. So from a total perspective, leaning towards the over 46.5, and then the other way of playing it is the Roosters over. Currently, I've looked at a couple of books and the line is around the 24 mark. Most of them are having it at the 24.5. If we get 23.5, I'd potentially play the Roosters team total to go over. And then also from a side perspective, the other potential bet I'm looking at in this game is just taking the Roosters to win this matchup. They've both been versing poor sides, so it's very hard to get a gauge on their overall recent form. However, I just do think in general, the Roosters have been performing better. However, both sides is coming in on 4 to 5 game win streaks as well. But I feel like it's going to be a fairly close game. Lean towards the overs, Roosters to win, and Roosters team total to go over. Storm are a side to get up for big games. So I'm not going to have, 3 or 4 plays in this game. It's only going to be 1, but they're the ways that I'm kind of looking at playing it overall in general. Then the Penrith Panthers take on the Dolphins on Sunday afternoon. So there's 3 Sunday games this weekend. Due to the fact there's no Thursday night game. They only had 1 matchup, which was round 20 last season, and the Panthers won 24-14 as 10.5-point favorites. So the Dolphins did cover there. Penrith minus 12.5 for this game. Nathan Cleary, named to return for the Panthers, is a massive in for them. And at home, I expect they win this game. I'm not super keen on the line here at minus 12.5. I feel like it's a very, very big number for this matchup. So it would slightly lean towards the Dolphins as the plus 12.5. But it's probably like in general, just not a game I want to get too involved in. I also do think Clear is probably not going to come back into, career best form in this first game back. So I feel like there's just been a little bit too much of an adjustment. That's what's pushing me towards the Dolphins at the plus. But I also do like the Panthers to be winning. I feel like probably the most value in this game is the Panthers 1-12. It's paying over $3 at most books to capitalize. And looking through the Dolphins' recent form, they had that 1 blowout against the Dragons, losing 26-6. However, the other games that they've lost throughout the season have all been fairly close, especially over the past 2 to 3 months. When they've lost, they've only lost by around that 4 points or less margin. So I feel like that could be the play in that game. Also, this season, Penrith really haven't been winning games by big margins either. Their last 3 wins have all been by the 1-12 margin. Wins against the Broncos, Knights, and Seagulls. They won 42-0 against the Sharks, but then prior to that, only won by 6 against the Bulldogs. So they haven't really, and we can bring up that data in a little bit more detail here. I'll show you guys. So far in 2024, the Panthers, their wins, 7 of the 11 have been by the 1-12 margin. And then the Dolphins, They've had 7 losses so far. 4 of those 7 have been by 1-12. So based on that perspective, and we can break it down just a little bit deeper here. The 1-6 margins. So far this season, Panthers wins, those 1-12 have been 4 by 7-12 and 3 by 1-6. And they've only had that one game where they've won by 13-18 and then 3 big blowout wins. And then the Dolphins, all 4 of their losses by 1-12 have been by the 1-6 margins. That gives us that bit of room to play with in that 1-12 range. So these are, what you're looking at here, some of the tools that I use when analyzing games to make my decisions on bets, because I'm not using, just how I feel about these sides or just what I can remember. We're actually using statistics to make these decisions. So we're using tools like the Bet Finders, which you see here. I'll put the link in the description, but this is how we can go through and actually analyze games, see how teams are performing, see where they rate overall in the league. So then we can make really, really good betting decisions and remove the guesswork. Also then on Sunday afternoon, Manly take on the Titans. The Seagulls, 8.5-point favorites, $1.31. And the total for this game is set at 50.5. 4 of the past 5 between these two sides have gone over the total points line, and straight away looking at this matchup, I was already considering a play for the over. Titans are a really bad defensive side, and the Seagulls have definitely got their attack up and running, putting up 44 points last week against the Knights, who are a pretty good defensive side. And we have seen in recent times this matchup has been really high scoring. They met in round 7 on the Gold Coast, 34-30 in favor of the Seagulls. Then it was a 36 total in round 9 last season. Prior to that, another few games with really high scores. So with 4 of the past 5 going over, Titans have won their past 3 and scored 24, 20, and 66 across those 3 games. And Manly, another side, capable of consistently scoring over 20 points. Manly are a pretty good defensive side, have them ranked 6th overall defensively. However, both these sides are top half of the competition, attacking sides, which should lead us to a high-scoring game. So do like the over there in good conditions on Sunday afternoon. Then final game of the round, Cowboys take on the Bulldogs. This is another one of those games where you definitely just have to kind of wait and see a little bit with Origin announcements. As it currently stands, the Cowboys coach has named all the Origin players in the reserve, similar to what the Broncos have done. And that makes it tricky to bet into this game. However, I am definitely keen on the Bulldogs to close out the round. I think just in general, they're the overall better side, and defensively, they can win this game on the back of that. They're the number 2 ranked defense in the competition. Cowboys, not that strong defensively, ranked 11th overall. Cowboys are the better attacking side. However, I don't think that's enough for them to be winning this game. Both sides come in on the back of the bye. Bulldogs have won 5 of their past 6. The only loss during that time against Sydney Roosters. And the Cowboys have lost 4 of their past 5 home games. The teams that they've lost against, the Seagulls, Warriors, Dolphins, and Panthers. And the only win during of those 5 home games was against the West Tigers, but they did concede 28 points in that matchup. So North Queensland hasn't really been, a really strong home venue for the Cowboys so far this season. And in this matchup, it hasn't been an issue for the away side, covering 11 of the past 15. Overall, obviously, some of those games being played in Sydney. Cowboys do have a good record, covering 5 of the past 6, but the Bulldogs won the corresponding game last year in round 5. As a 2.5-point favorite, 15-14, and they did win their last trip up there, 6 points to 4. So like the Bulldogs as the underdog to close out the round. 6 of the past 8 between these two sides have gone under the total points line. At 47.5, I do think that number is another one which is slightly high and would be leaning towards the under, but not with much confidence, and definitely prefer the side on the Bulldogs to close out the round. So we'll go through, recap the games. Raiders versus Warriors, leaning towards the Warriors in the opening game of the round to get the win there as the underdog. Rabbitohs versus Tigers. Do think the Rabbitohs win this game and lean towards the over. Could also look at playing this matchup as a same game multi with the Rabbitohs into an alternate line and bring that number down from 51.5 down to say 41.5, 43.5. Knights versus Broncos. Staying out of this game until lineups are finalized, but do like either side 1 to 10. Storm versus Roosters, like the Roosters to be winning, and also interested in the over and Roosters team total over. Panthers, Dolphins, lean towards the Panthers 1 to 12, but not a game I'm super excited about betting into. Seagulls versus Titans. I like the over here at 50.5, and Bulldogs to beat the Cowboys in the final game of the round. That's how I'm looking at playing the games this weekend. If you want all my official bets, you can get those in the bet finders, which is where you also get access to all the different tools that I use when it comes to analyzing games, like I showed you earlier, with the bet finders, the betting guides, going through historical margins, how much teams have been winning by, how many points they score home or away as a favorite underdog, and so on and so forth. For every side, updated after every game, right throughout the season, to help make sure you're making really good betting decisions and actually making money from your betting. Plus, you also get all the try score information. Posted a video last weekend going through the try scorers, went through 4 games, highlighted 9 potential try scorers, and 8 of them were able to get over the line. Thankfully, in the Sharks West Tigers game, Braden Trindle got over the line in the very last minute of that game. I think watching the game, he had at least 3, maybe even 4 chances where he had made a break and was tackled within around that 10 meters out from the try line. So the fact he got over the line late was really good. But I'll definitely have had lots of feedback from that video that you guys want more try scorer videos. So there'll be one of those coming out closer to the start of round 20. Try and get this video up for you as early as possible. Kind of like before more information is available, just so you can already start thinking about the way you're going. Because one of the worst things you can do with betting is try and make rushed last minute decisions where you don't have time to actually handle the information. So one thing I like to do is already on the Monday mornings, already be looking at the upcoming games for that round, and not necessarily already lock in and decide exactly what I'm going to be betting on, but already know who's going to be playing. So just in the back of my mind throughout the week, I can be considering each of the matchups and coming to a conclusion of how I want to play those games. So that's the reason I post these. Make sure you guys are making money betting on the NRL and also other sports you're betting on, because the same principles we're talking about in this video also apply no matter what sport you're betting on. So if you're interested, definitely check out the bet finders. Use them to close out the season. We have 8 rounds of the season to go, including round 20. And then we got 4 weeks of finals. So let's end this season on a high. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the videos for the rest of the season, and especially the try score video coming out later this week. I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks for watching.